is a presentation of William Paterson University Television.
Hello and welcome to SFA Presents. I'm your host Wyatt, and today we will feature a short film called Obsidian, written and directed by Alex Vigna. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So before we start, this is a Film 3 project, which is the last level of filmmaking here at William Paterson. So
Right.
for those of us in the audience who haven't watched, who have not been in Film 3, could you describe the structure of the class to us?
So typically film class, film 1, film 2, whatever else you take, you work on a couple things throughout the semester. Your final project, you alone, or maybe you have some friends help you, but everybody makes their own film. With film 3, it's just the opposite, where you spend literally the entire semester, everybody works together, you make one film. So somebody's the director, somebody's the producer, somebody's cameraman, et cetera, et cetera.
So everyone has a
right.
position.
Essentially with the intent to simulate the real world, how a real film would be made.
Okay, so, and I also understand you guys have some stuff with casting calls and
Right,
stuff
yeah, we
like
do a
that.
casting call, we do several phases of revisions to the script where needed, and all the stuff that you would do.
A lot of time in post, in the real world, or more so on the pre-production production side?
I mean, it depends how the semester works out, of course, but in our case, yeah, we spent a couple weeks on post, whereas, you know, like my film 2 project, we did in like 2 days of post, you know.
All right, so Obsidian's a horror film.
Yes.
So this isn't your first take on the horror genre. What makes you so, I guess, infatuated with that subject?
It's interesting. You can do a lot of cool tricks with cinematography and effects with horror, generally on a smaller budget, which as a student is great. Okay. You don't really have a producer giving you a lot of money. So you can do a lot of really interesting things and do stuff that appears at like a professional level within the capabilities of a student, and that's what I've always tried to do.
That's kind of in direct contrast to Hollywood nowadays, to where like all horror movies are like huge, like big budget and like huge CGI type stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Proving that you can kind of get away with some older, more practical effects like we've done.
All right, that's really cool. So I understand that this was a script that you wrote over the summer. So like, was it really tough writing it, or?
The initial draft was pretty easy. It's funny, like where the inspiration came from, which I'll explain a little more after. But there's a certain effect, and I saw a picture of the product we used to make the effect, and I'm like, I have to make a film around that. So, like, it immediately hit me. So I wrote it, and then we came into the semester and we rewrote it a couple of times, always keeping that effect though as like the centerpiece.
So you kind of just spent like 3 or 4 months kind of like working on it, and then you walked into film 3, which typically you take a film from, you take a screenplay from the screenwriting class, and then you take it. So you guys just decided to just go with yours?
Yeah, well, I came in with one, and 2 other people in my class came in with one. One person ended up being our producer, and another who ended up being our lighting guy. The both of them also wrote scripts, and we let everybody in the class read them, let the professor read them. We kind of voted on them, acknowledged that they all had flaws, and they all need work. And then eventually we decided, okay, let's go with Alex's, but let's change it up a little bit, and we did. Of course, there's no such thing as a perfect script.
And Professor Gary allowed you to direct it?
Yes.
Okay, wow, that's very interesting. Well, before I start to ask questions about the story, let's take a look at Obsidian.
Hey Ash, what are you doing home? I thought it was Alyssa's birthday today.
Just not in the mood for a party.
What's wrong?
Nothing, Mom. Just forget about it.
Honey, come on, she's your best friend. Let's go.
Mom, what the fuck?
Watch your language and go to your friend's party. Hang on a sec, are you sweating?
I need to do some homework before I go, okay?
All right, just don't take too long. And why are you wearing long sleeves? It's May.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I must have fallen asleep. Had a nightmare.
All right, honey, well, get out of there.
Just a sec, yeah. Mom? Mom? Are you in my bathroom? What the hell? No, 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 no.
Ashley? Ashley? Honey?
Wow, that was really dark. Very, very dark. That was probably the darkest film that we've had so far on the show. So I have to ask, why did you guys decide to go for drug use? What made you go on that route?
So we, as I said before, I mentioned we talked like where this inspiration for this came from with that effect, which is the black water that we saw over and over again. So I wrote it just as a horror film with that, right? I'm like,
Really?
that would be a cool effect. Let me write a horror film where there's black water and it's spooky, right? I didn't really have a moral for it. Thankfully, I go into class and Professor Guerreri is like, this is cool, but there's no moral. So we tossed a few things around. We talked about depression and a couple other things. But then ultimately we settled on drug use as would make an appropriate metaphor after a lot of discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, very interesting. So a couple of things that you noticed in the film. Like you said before we actually played the film, you said that very low budget helps a horror movie. What's some of the practical effects that happen in the film because of the low budget you think makes it better?
Right, so the way we do the black water is we talked about doing it in post, right?
Okay.
And we shot a couple still shots of water, a couple shots of running water, and tried keying it out and different things, and it never really worked out quite the way we wanted it to, or it was very tedious, one or the other. So we decided to do some research into ways we can safely dye the water black.
Right.
You're familiar with bath bombs, right?
So what, did you just like color dye a bath
No,
bomb? No,
they sell them in black.
Really?
Yeah, they sell them in black. It's made of charcoal.
All right. Wow. Very
And it's it's natural. It
natural,
washes
just
right
threw
off.
it on in there.
Yeah, you just throw it in the bathtub.
Throw some black dye into the toilet and the
That
top
was
part
also
of the toilet.
the toilet. We opened it up through like a little shard of a bath bomb in there. Closed it.
Wow.
Yeah, and then with the orange, that was a very dark food coloring.
Food coloring.
Yeah.
Okay, so the overall composition of the film, though, used a lot of still shots.
Mm-hmm.
Why is that?
So when A, we're working in a small space, options are a little limited. B, I find it works in horror when the shots aren't moving. You get a sort of sense of claustrophobia.
Okay.
It's like you only know what is in the frame. If you move around, you get a full sense of the room. You're like, okay, I know what's here. I know what's going on. Nothing's going to sneak up on me. If you're just in the frame, you never know. Something could come out at any moment. So it creates an extra sense of tension.
You have no idea what's really going on.
Yeah.
Then you drop the color temperature to have a very distinguished sense between what was in her druggy world and,
Right, whenever
reality.
things were getting weird and
Okay.
there was drugs happening, it got very blue. When it was not, it was more normal, looking a little more warm.
Okay, so why, you left us with a very vague ending. Do you have an idea of what really happened to the main character, or are you just going to leave us in suspense?
We like to leave it in suspense. We talked about resolving it, having it go on a little further, seeing her mom's reaction, and for many reasons we just decided not to go with that. We thought it was just better to leave it. Thought it was more impactful to leave it that way.
So as the writer, you're not even completely sure yourself, I'm guessing.
Not 100%. There were so many versions of this script that I talked about it with the producer, Professor Guerreri, and everybody else in the class, and we just decided, yeah, no, those other endings aren't as good.
Well,
let's just go with that one.
Okay, well, personally for me, I like a vague ending, but that's all the time we have for today. As always, a special thanks to our studio manager, Al Clark. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page, and this has been SFA Presents.